I know a lot of people who are struggling in their lives right now, and I want to tell you a story in the hope that it might help someone out there to understand what's happening with the energy on the planet and how that is causing that feeling of struggle in life. Um, I'm 53, and lots of people I know who are struggling are around about my age. So they were raised around the in the era that I was. And I thought I was raised in a loving family, and I was. But I can see now there's a huge difference between the energetic dynamics in my current family as to what there were in mine growing up. And again, comparing that to what it was like when my parents were growing up was very different as well. If you think about things like um, corporal punishment was around, kids were hit, often with belts and sticks, and even in schools. That's all gone. And in fact, some people may say that it's gone from one extreme to another, and perhaps that's having an adverse effect as well. Not such a great effect, perhaps. So my father was in the Vietnam War, and his father was in World War II. So just the energy of that in the house must have been so heavy, and I mean, I wasn't even aware of it back then. But Dad was raised in a household that struggled financially. There were 8 kids in his family. Mum was raised in a family that also struggled financially, and there were 6 kids in her family. So, I know from listening to Mum that she was the eldest of 3 girls, and she pretty much, I believe, raised her younger 2 sisters because there were 3 older brothers as well, and her mum and dad were very busy. So in my family, there were 2 kids. So, and times were hard for my mum and dad, but in a completely different way to how things were for their parents. And, because there were only 2 kids, then they had more time for us. Although, in saying that, they still didn't have much time or make much time because they were raised not knowing that. And this is my story basically, that we do what we know, and we can't do anything different until we learn there is a difference, or that someone tells us or shows us. So throughout my life, I have had this view of what life's supposed to be about. And I think most people have a similar view. So you think, you go to school, you want to get a good education, you might go to university to get a degree, or you might go to TAFE to do an apprenticeship, or you might just get a job. All of these things are fine, but you want to the view is either I want a job that's going to, or an income that's going to bring me the things that I want, as in I would like to buy a house, I'd like to buy a car, I'd like to have some nice things and go on holidays, that I'd like to meet a nice person and settle down and have some kids and be happy. Now, that might not be everybody's desire, and that's fine. But I think that we are raised in a society where that's kind of the dream, or that's told to us that that's what you want to aspire to. Um, so that's what I did. And then I got to 2014, and I had the home, I had the husband, I had a son, I had a job, and I was miserable. I was in what I would call then an abusive relationship. I mean, I didn't know that for quite some time, but I came to learn that it was an abusive relationship. However, over time, I've come to understand that because I was existing in very high masculine energy, and so was my husband at the time, and we were both very fearful about love, and um, and fearful energy was within us because our chakras weren't balanced. We didn't know about our aura, our energy around us, and protecting that. And we were vibrating at very low energy levels. And because our chakras weren't balanced, our root chakra at the base, which is all about feeling safe and secure in life and in the world, we didn't feel safe. So we were operating from fear, based in fear and scarcity. And we were, worried a lot and um, fearing things and making decisions based on that. And therefore, we were then manifesting future outcomes based on that. And that thinking and feeling of lack is what then created was creating our lives. And there was lots of arguing and yelling and awfulness. And we both thought that we were right and we both wanted to be right. And we thought that's what was important. And it's not. So I had a real awakening in about 2014. And then, actually, it might have even been 2000. Started in 2012. And then at the end of 2014, I left my marriage. And I thought that leaving my marriage would solve the problem. And to a degree, it did. However, things actually got worse when I left. And um, in some ways, my ex husband got worse, reacted and responded worse. And I continued to live in fear for quite some time. Even though I was raising my vibration and my energy was high, and I was chatting to the universe, and the universe was sending me signs, which I saw as guidance, and I was taking steps. And sometimes those steps that I took were so incredibly wrong because, not because, but I'm so glad that all happened because that was part of my learning. Because what had happened was my soul had become awake, and my level of consciousness was waking up and wanting more. I wanted more out of life. I wanted to be happy and to feel happy, and so in our minds, we have subconscious and consciousness in our minds, but there's only 5% consciousness and 95% is subconscious. And the subconscious is all about our past experiences and our ancestry and upbringing. And so when the 5% of our mind says, I want this, the 95% says, but hang on a minute, remember when you did this back in 10 years ago and it all turned to shit? Don't do that. Don't do that. So then the conscious mind, whose job it is to protect you, keep you safe, says, no, we're not going to do that. So, like for example, if you had to give a speech, right, and your subconscious mind says, don't do that because remember last time you did it, it was so embarrassing and your face went red and you couldn't remember what you had to say and everybody laughed or people talked about you. So how about, I know you don't want to do it, so how about I make you sick? I'll give you a tummy bug or a vomiting bug, so you can't go to work on that day, and then you won't be able to make that speech. And this is what happens. Our subconscious runs the show. Our conscious mind then actions it, and whatever we believe, which is in our subconscious, is what we then manifest. So if we have a whole lot of limiting beliefs, which I did, then that's what you continue to manifest. Even if you've raised your energy, your vibration to a high energy level, I was still making decisions based in fear and based on my limiting beliefs. So an example of a limiting belief is like, I remember my dad used to say a lot, life's a struggle and money's hard to come by. And they are beliefs that were so entrenched in my subconscious mind that I wasn't even aware of them. I used to say it. Dad said this, but I didn't actually realize that that was a really firmly held belief in my mind. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to make a part 2 because I don't want this to get too long. So if you're interested in listening to more, look for part 2.